Hi, readers. Welcome back. It's Kim, the lifelong reader. I'm back to talk to you about Tinkers from Paul Harding. This novel and I got acquainted with each other in September, and then we were together all the way through the third week of October, which, for a slender little volume of roughly 200 pages, it took me quite a while to get through it. Overall, I really, really, really liked this reading experience, but it came with its challenges, and I'm hoping that I can help you to get through it if you decide that it's a book that you might like to read too. So let's talk about this book. So you've heard me say that this book talks to you about a gentleman who is in the last 8 days of his life. But the bulk of the book really spends time with the Crosby family as a whole, but it focuses on really two different generations of the men in that family. Howard is the father to George, who is the son, and we do also meet Howard's father a little bit as well in this book, though he really does remain nameless. I don't remember reading his name, but I do know that it was Howard's father, and he was a minister or a preacher. So we knew what his profession was, but we didn't really catch his name that I recall. Anyway, so the book spends most of the time with Howard. So we are diving in and out of these two different generations of Crosby men's lives. And we're doing so, I believe, based upon the reminiscences, the hallucinations, the looking back over his life that George is doing uncontrollably as he heads toward the end of his life. So the fact that we're doing it sort of out of order and a little disjointedly makes this novel feel a little bit jarring at times. It is full of beautiful nature writing. Harding says he enjoys pastoral writing, so it is beautiful writing, but it is large chapters. And within the chapters, we're going to be changing from one paragraph to the next often. Characters, settings, time frames. So we're going to go from Howard's old age to, George's childhood, or George's childhood to Howard's childhood. Or we may be diving into one of the vignettes that Paul Harding added into this novel, and those are an assortment of different things that pop in. It may be something that sounds like or reads like a antique manual on clock repair, or something that resembles political satire, and you're asking yourself, how in the world does that fit there? So once I finally got into the book and I started reading, and I realized that I was having a lot of difficulty with the writing style. Sometimes the length of the sentences was a little daunting as well. I decided to go back to what I knew about Harding, which was an interview on David Perell's channel here on YouTube, which I'll put a link to that in the description so you can find it if you'd like to. But I had watched an interview with Paul Harding on that channel. And so I went back to that interview and I watched what he had to say, and I immediately knew exactly what I needed to do as the reader to get through this book. And I learned all of that by the advice that Harding says he gives to aspiring writers. So we'll talk through a little bit of that. The first thing I remember him saying is that when he writes a novel, he wants to blow your mind and break your heart. And that hit me because I was already emotionally invested in this story. It's a gentle story. I was very drawn to the characters, drawn to their situation, drawn to their vulnerability. And I wanted to definitely learn more about them. And I could tell that what Harding was promising, blowing my mind and breaking my heart, was going to be something that was going to be coming to me as the reader of this book. So that's where he starts with his students. And to do that, he tells these aspiring writers that they need to fill their novels with a richness of meaning. And in that, he means that the first time he read Melville, He loved it, but he didn't get all of the nuance. And when he went back to it, he got even more from it. And when he went back to it again, he received even more. And after he read the Old Testament and went back to Melville, he received even more. He riffs about the fact that we humans, as connoisseurs of art, music, movies, we never listen to our favorite albums just once. And Harding takes that approach with his reading. He readily says he went off to his undergraduate to become a better reader, and he ended up becoming a writer so he could talk back to this literature that he loves. And that fit so much what I was seeing in this book. It made so much sense once I heard him say that. So they've got to develop that richness of meaning. The reader is not going to pick up on all of the nuance the first time, nor do you need to spoon feed it to them so they can. You should avoid doing that. You should make it very rich, very nuanced, and your reader can come back to it and gather things on reapproach, which I am a rereader. I know some of you aren't. I am a rereader. And I've always looked at it like books that I read in my 20s, I want to revisit in my 30s and 40s and 50s and see if they hit the same way. So that's how I look at it. But he's looking at it as going back to them and getting a new experience. It's basically the same thing. Once you have more life experience, sometimes your favorite novels hit differently. So to get the richness of experience, he described that, sometimes writers want things very fast. They want it to be over and done. And his advice to them was slow down, pay attention, be very observant to what you're seeing. And again, that clicked with me. I've told you all millions of times on this channel that I am a fast reader. Hearing him say that the writer has to slow down really meant a lot to me as the reader. And I added that into what I was doing. I was already kind of being forced to do that because I was having so much difficulty with the book. But instead of doubling down on my focus, I was getting irritated and thinking maybe this was not the book for me. So hearing him say that the writer themselves have to be patient and slow down meant a lot. So he went on to describe his writing process. And when he described it, he said that he will sit down and he will write, and eventually the manuscript will grow and grow and grow, and then he will hone it down and refine it. And that cycle will repeat several times. It will grow and grow and grow, and he will hone it and refine it. And that is how he gets that richness of meaning into his stories. And something he said that really struck a nerve with me in that section of the interview was that when he's going through that process, he allows the language to say what it wants, or he can't wait to see what the language comes up with. And to me, that struck me. I'm a lover of words and language, and to think that Harding considers himself just as much a passenger in this novel as I do was really kind of interesting. And again, it just fostered my desire to tackle this book and get to the end. So I went back at it, and I will say right around the 72 page mark, it seemed to me that the story got much more interesting. We were finally into the meat of what the story was. And again, you guys know me, I'm a bittersweet kind of person. I enjoy poignant stories that show you sometimes the beauty of sadness. So Tinkers to me is a novel that shows you the beauty of the vulnerability of the walk that we all take through life. It comes with pain, it comes with choices, it comes with reverberations from those choices. I'm going to make choices that are going to affect other people, and they're going to make choices that are going to affect me. And there's nothing that I can do about it. It's going to change the rest of my life. That is part of living. That is part of the pain of living that comes into each of our lives in one extent or the other. So it is also, it's a reflection back across generations. There is a metaphor within this book that a lot of people point out as far as George repairs antique clocks after he retires. So there is a metaphor, and there are a few passages in the book that talk about the winding down of a clock and maybe equating that to the winding down of a life or the passing of time in a life. So there are different types of metaphors and versions like that. There is also, in my eyes, an invitation to us to slow down and look at the world around us, the beauty of nature. Sit down in the dirt. Sit down in that stream. Feel that water running across your legs as it works to diverge around you, and feel the coolness and feel the wind and watch the leaves turn from the green to the silvery sides in the wind. I mean, if you've ever spent an afternoon outside doing that, just listening, closing your eyes and feeling the wind on your cheeks and the sounds in the air, the wind blowing through the leaves. I mean, this novel evokes all of that for me. So there are several sentences in here that I tripped over that took me a while to get through them. I don't know how you guys read, but sometimes I'll read silently in my head and sometimes I'll read aloud to myself. This book I processed best when I read in a low tone of voice and I slowed down and I listened to myself talk through the story. And that was the best way for me to get through this book. And don't hear me say get through this book as if it was a slog. It was a majestic experience. It was wonderful. I enjoyed it, but I was failing as a reader. I didn't have the focus. I didn't have the attention. I was giving up very easily initially until I gave myself permission to slow down, be patient, observe as he tells the writers. That is what worked for me. It is the hardest thing I've ever read. And when I made the connection with Harding's interview with David Perell, and I went to this book intentionally with the guidance of slow down, be patient, be observant, take in what you're seeing and process it. Don't expect to get it all the first time. When I went back to this book with that, and I enjoyed it so much, I wept in several places in this book. It's extremely moving to me. And I thought of all the books that I have tried to read in the past that I came away with thinking, well, that was terrible. And if I had approached them the way that I approached this book in the end, I think I probably would have been much more satisfied with the outcome. If you're reading this book, or if you've already read this book, I'd love to hear your opinions on it. Even if they're different than mine, there's room for everybody's opinion here. I want to encourage you that if you're looking for plot-driven fiction, this is not it. Do not pick this up. You will be disappointed. Okay, so go into that knowing that. It's really important for you to realize that. And if you are thinking about picking it up and you read it based on this recommendation, please do let me know. I would love to find out how you feel about it, how you enjoyed it. And I hope wherever you are, you're having a marvelous day today. And until I see you again, happy reading.